Hello and welcome to this month's Newbies Live. We are going to be talking all about the enrichment opportunities you might be looking to add to your homeschool, maybe some pros and cons to each and ways to incorporate that in while still making sure that you get your schoolwork done. I am Sunny, and I'm also a Sonlight mom with two children, ages 9 and 14, who have been homeschooled with Sonlight since day one. And joining me today is another one of your Sonlight mentors, Anne. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. Thank you, Sunny. My name is Anne, and I am a Sonlight mom. My kids are 20 and 17, so I am only homeschooling one at the moment. And we started with Sonlight back in 2007. I'm a mentor here on the app, and so you'll see me there. And I also do some of the conventions around the country. So I hope to see y'all at a convention sometime too.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for being here. So let's dive right into maybe some of those fun enrichment activities that you can add. Of course, if you're homeschooling with Sonlight, you've got your curriculum covered, your instructor's guides are giving you all the plans, but you might be feeling like you want or need to do a little more. So let's start with the co-op idea. This is something that, of course, homeschoolers are familiar with, but if you're new to homeschooling, you may not know what that means or if that's something you should be a part of. So can you tell us a little bit more about what a co-op is, maybe some options people might have?
Yeah. A homeschool co-op is basically a cooperative group of homeschoolers that meet to do things with their kids. So, it could be something as simple as a group that meets to go to the park once a month or something like that in your community. At a more organized level, there are co-ops that have classes for homeschool kids. And there are really a couple of different categories of homeschool co-ops like that. Some types are the type where you drop your kids off and they've got teachers, that are hired to do certain things. And there are other co-ops that are parent-led, where you sign up and you participate. And so they're looking at those different things. You would you just want to get potentially involved with something that meets your needs as a homeschool parent. Another category, couple of categories of homeschool co-ops are enrichment versus core classes. There are some co-ops that you can take, you can bring them to the co-op and they'll teach your child Algebra 1 or science or something, an actual core type of class. But then there are also co-ops that exist that are for enrichment, where you get to choose what homeschool curriculum you do for all of your main things, and then you go to this co-op to get some extras. And my personal experience is with a parent-led enrichment co-op, and we joined it when my children were in 4th and 6th grade. And one of the things to consider is the commitment that it will be for you and your family. Because when you do commit to teaching a class and being there for however many weeks it is, that kind of makes you set other things aside potentially. And for a long time, up until they were in the 4th or the 6th grade, we would go on trips just whenever we wanted and take advantage of all of the non-peak season things and all of that. And so when the kids were younger, we were not involved at all in any kind of co-op, because we just enjoyed doing what we were doing and having the flexibility that we had to just pick up and go wherever we wanted. It was great. But the co-ops do exist. They're out there. Some pros and cons. I've already mentioned a couple of these, but think definitely about the time commitment that would be required of you and your kids. And then the pros, though, of course, they are great ways to meet other homeschooling families and to potentially give your kids the opportunity to do things that they would not otherwise get to do. But at the high school level, mine have been able to take a speech class, which is not the easiest thing to do at home with 2 kids, and things like art and even cooking and baking, things. I do cook. I'm not a baker. If you see other videos with me, you will know that my daughter is the baker, and that's partly due to this homeschool co-op. She's gotten to do some of that she absolutely loves. So it can be a way that your children can learn from others that have other strengths that you don't, and they can learn all sorts of things that you wouldn't necessarily be comfortable teaching them or be successful at.
Well, and I love you brought up speech, which of course that's better if you have an audience,
Mhm.
maybe more than a few people. I've heard science projects, like when you get to those lab sciences in high school, that's another thing that maybe you don't want to dissect the frog on your kitchen counter, so you can send the kids somewhere else to do those things. But yeah, but I know like for our family, I work during the day. So the ones that meet in the park at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, that's not going to work for me. And so we've never participated in anything like that. Although when my daughter was in first grade, we actually sent her the local Christian school had a homeschool academy where homeschooled kids could come in and join them for the special classes. So like gym class, art, music, all of those non-academic things. They could come in for a few hours a week and take the fun classes. They could eat hot lunch if you wanted to sign them up for that, which I know at that age, when my daughter wanted to go to school, it was so she could eat hot lunch and, you know, be in plays and musicals and do sports and all the various fun things at school. She definitely wasn't saying, boy, I really wish I could sit in a classroom and learn math. But it was, I want to go do those fun things. And so we found that Christian school that offered that. And it was something that I could drop her off at. Like Ian said, you kind of have to figure out, you know, what your commitment ability is, what your level is. I always knew that I did not want to coordinate or teach or write my own curriculum. That's part of why I use Sonlight, so that I don't have to do that with the actual curriculum. And so I knew I did not want to teach any classes, but if I could drop her off for those fun things, then she had fun with it. Sadly, we moved and I have not found anything like that since, unfortunately. But yeah, but there are lots of options like that. I think you did a great job of highlighting some of the pros and cons too. It gives the kids an opportunity maybe to learn fun things that they would not learn in your home. What is the best way though for somebody to find that? I know we often see this in the app where people say, hey, either I'm new to an area or I just started homeschooling. How do I find those homeschool activities? Or what about people that maybe don't live close to a city? What are some options for them if they're homeschooling?
That is a very good question, because I know when you're first homeschooling, you may just feel like you're this little island, all alone. But there are others, out there like you. And an internet search can be a great way to find anything local in your area, and a word of mouth is also big. When you do meet other homeschoolers, they may know about some of these opportunities that you did not know about. I think your local library is a great place to meet other people and get information, because if you go to the library during the school day with your kids and you see other people there with their kids on a school day, you can pretty much figure they're homeschooling. And they may be a good resource. I think a children's librarian could be a good resource also. Since I've been involved in my co-op for ages and ages, I have people that give out my email address, to others that are interested. And so that kind of word of mouth can get around. So word of mouth, internet searching. If you do have a local or a state homeschool organization kind of thing, they may be a resource too to find some different things. And if you do live very not in any sort of city or town, to join a co-op, of course you would expect to have to drive. We actually have had people drive close to an hour to get to ours. And I live in a city that's just about 25,000 people. So we're not super big, but we definitely have some opportunities. So they're out there. Facebook groups can also be a good way. Or locally, we have a few Facebook groups, one for the co-op, one for just homeschoolers in our county, one for park day, one for field trip day. So you can start searching for some of those things online too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Google makes everything so much easier now than it used to be, whether that's finding out your state homeschool laws or what activities are in the area. And then social media, our Sonlight Connections app is a great way to find other Sonlighters. But I know if there's anything I'm remotely interested in, there's probably a group for it out there online that you can find. And I know my daughter found an online theater class for kids that travel. They're all homeschooled and they all full-time travel. And it was just because we started joining these various groups online, and I was like, okay, what's out there? And so, yeah, you will find that online there's a ton of opportunities. And I think post-pandemic, as everybody became comfortable with Zoom and other online avenues, there's even more of that than there was even 5 years ago. So let's talk about some of the other activities you mentioned, like the library. Another thing I always say is Chick-fil-A play places. In it on a weekday, you'll find all the homeschoolers there too, if your kids are little. But let's talk about some of those other extracurriculars they can be involved in, maybe with or without a co-op, not necessarily with other homeschoolers, things like sports and classes and various things they can take. What are some options for that?
Oh, there are so many options. Like I said, I don't live in a super big, city, but some of the things that I've personally gotten to do, we didn't join the co-op until my kids were older, but oh man, we were at the library, imagine that, Sunlighters being at the library a whole lot. And so typically libraries will have story time for younger children, and that's a super fun way to get out of the house a little bit and potentially meet some other folks. And the kids love story time. And so that's something that we did when they were little. In sports, typically for younger children, your city will have some sort of different sports leagues, or there might be organizations that have different sports leagues, and kids from all school districts in the area and homeschoolers can join these things. So we personally did soccer for 1 year, and then ended up in T-ball the next year. And then that baseball went all the way through until he aged out of that program. And then we ended up in basketball with a homeschool group. And that's another thing. There are, especially in a larger city, but even in my small town, we have a homeschool athletics organization, and it has grown. So basketball is an option. And then depending on where you live, homeschoolers could potentially participate in public school sports. It depends on the laws in your state. But we have a local private school that started up a baseball team, and they needed a few other people to make the team. And so they reached out to homeschoolers. And so my son got to round out that baseball. He had all the way through 8th grade, had to take a couple years off, and got to finish his senior year doing baseball again. It was so much fun. Okay, I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but like I said, there's so many sports that you can do. And then and typically the soccer, the basketball, the baseball are not too expensive because it's all volunteer based. You've got all volunteer coaches and things like that. You've got, fees to pay the referees or the umpires and things like that. If your child is interested in something a little different, like music lessons, or art lessons, something like that, you can find private teachers that you can go in for 30 minutes a week for lessons and things like that. And those would be more individual things, not so much a group. But there's all sorts of ways to explore your child's different interests. And a theater. Speaking of theater, we took a little trial run in theater. We have a community theater that had classes for kids. And let me think. Gymnastics is another one. There's just all sorts of sports. So name it, there's somebody doing it, and you just have to do a little bit of research to see how it's going to fit in your schedule. So things to consider with that. I think there's really two main things to consider when you're looking at all, because I've listed so many, you obviously can't pick them all. But I do encourage people to dabble in it a little bit, because it is super fun to get to see your child learning some sort of team sport or something like that. But consider your finances, because these things have a wide range of financial commitment. Which I would say, a competition gymnastics team ranks way up top, and, just your local, youth soccer league, it is very inexpensive. And then you also need to consider how often you want to be at home. For real. If you've got, multiple kids involved in multiple activities, there could be weeks that you're never at home in the evening, period. And if that's something that's not going to work for you, you just really need to look and pick and choose, one activity per child, or everybody just has to do the same thing. I had a friend who had 4 boys, and so they just all did baseball. And so that way they were at least, all in the same place, all day on Saturday, having all their baseball games and things like that. So those are the considerations, the finances, and of course the time commitment too.
Yeah, that's so true. I love what you said about kind of letting kids dabble. I think that's so good when they're little, they don't really know what they want to do. And the way we did that was just the local Parks and Rec catalog of like, oh, look, here's 8 weeks of baseball. Here's, 5 weeks of rugby camp or whatever it might be. And we just kind of signed the kids up for anything that sounded interesting. And my only requirement is that you finish the course. Like if they come back after the first week and they're like, that was awful, I never want to do that again, I'm like, just finish what we signed you up for, and then you never have to do it again. But it gives kids kind of that opportunity to try different things. But I love what you said about the time commitment too, because I know with my big 5-year age gap, my daughter was doing a lot of activities when my son was a baby and then a toddler, and he wasn't really doing anything yet. And we got to a point where she was doing competitive dance, and every night of the week we were driving her to and from the studio, and then we realized our poor son was not getting to do anything except go to rehearsals and watch her dance. And so we were like, okay, we've got 2 kids, we've got to cut you back so he can do some stuff. We were also tired of driving back and forth to all the activities. Her dance studio was about 30 minutes away, which sounded not that far until it was every week and having to drive all over the place. And so we did cut back on that. But I know there was a local art studio that offered, kind of like the wine and paint classes for adults, but for kids, you could just sign up and do one painting. And then they offered ceramics classes. And so my kids have taken classes like that with friends. There was even it was like a seamstress alteration shop in town that offered beginning sewing classes, like teaching a child how to hem their pants, how to use a sewing machine for basic things. And my daughter loved that so much, she asked for a sewing machine for Christmas. And now she definitely outsews anything I could do. I could barely hem my pants. But just these basic classes that this little store offered. So yeah, I love what you said about looking at the library. They do a lot of things like that, where there might be, oh, this month, here's the theme, we're bringing in somebody to teach how to do this or whatever. And I know we've never particularly sought out things that other homeschoolers are doing necessarily. It's just, oh, that looks fun. And I find that our kids do gravitate towards the other homeschoolers in that environment. So even if there's kids who go to school, they speak the same language, if you will, as far as like they're both very interested in whatever the activity is, or they're willing to try new things, or if it's a community class, they might be the only kids there, but it doesn't bother them if they want to learn something. So yeah, we just kind of sign them up for all the things. And then same thing with theater. My daughter did discover she loved performing, and so she did a play at the local kids theater, and our son enjoyed watching it. So then he auditioned the next year, and that was great. That was the first time that they were both in something at the same time. And so their session, they would have rehearsals and stuff on Friday nights, and my husband and I got a date night out of it, because we were like, hey, we're dropping off both kids, so they're doing something fun, we know they're taken care of, and now we can go to dinner. So activities like that, as your kids mature, as they get older and really kind of hone in on what their interests are, I think it's easier to pick that out. But yeah, my only requirement is that my kids do something. I don't want them just sitting around on the couch doing nothing. But it doesn't have to be, anything crazy or elaborate necessarily. We're just going to try new things. And, I liken it back to when I was a kid. I tried a bunch of different things, but am I a professional athlete today? Am I a professional any of those classes? No, but there's things that I enjoy doing now that I learned as a child. So that's kind of my goal with those things. We are not looking
I love that point. That you're right. When you talk to, I'm sure, your daughter may have been very disappointed having to cut back on the dance, but in the big scheme of things, it's true. They're not likely. I know that there are definitely professional, sports people out there, but the majority are not. And so if you do have to cut back, it really, is not a problem, but they can find things that they learn to love. And just a little quick story, my baseball loving kid would love to play kickball with his friends, in the yard and whatnot. And he's part of a campus Christian ministry now in college, and they went on a fall conference, and every school that went got to form a kickball team. So he was in charge of putting together his kickball team, and he made sure they practiced, and they actually won their first game, and he was so excited. And so you never know. Oh, the other thing about where it can lead you, your extracurricular activity can lead you to a job. And this happened when my son became the age where he could work as an umpire for the little kids at the baseball field. So he actually made some good money his senior year because of his knowledge of the sports that he had gained along the way through. So you just never know where things will lead. So it's super fun just to get them involved in things and see where it leads. And it is also just for a season. Typically things are just like you mentioned before, 6 weeks for this, or a couple of months for that. And it's all just seasonal. So nothing, is forever.
Yeah, so if you are feeling a little overstrapped, just slowly phase those things out. Yeah. And yeah, like what we said, it is just a season. So if your child hates it, I think that teaches perseverance and doing hard things. And so that is something that, yeah, you mentioned the financial investment. If we have invested and we have an unrefundable deposit, okay, we've already paid for this, let's just do it. We never have to do it again, but we're going to learn about perseverance, and there's good life lessons in that, and then okay, I hate baseball, I'm never going to play it again, or whatever the sport may be, which is not unlike adults. We try things and then we may discover, oh, we don't like that, so we're not going to do that again. But yeah, it definitely gives them something to do. Also, like I said earlier, because I'm a working mom, I've never done the activities during the day. So doing some of these evening activities is kind of a break for me to then focus on school with the other child. So that's something you might want to consider too, if you're working a weird schedule or you're trying to do school at weird times. If I can offload one kid to an activity one night, I can really focus on the other child, and then vice versa. So because my kids have that big gap, they've never shared curriculum, sometimes it's easier for me to teach them individually, and it gives them time to do their own activities too. So you might want to look at, is this going to be a huge time commitment for you, whatever their activity is? And you mentioned like volunteer coaching for something, anytime there needs to be a volunteer, I always sign my husband up for that. He's excited to do those fun things. And then that's the time that I catch up on whatever else I didn't get done during the day. So you can also look at that as an opportunity to maybe allow your kids to go out and do fun things while you get other things done. And that's just one of the ways that I kind of balance all the things. So let's talk now about celebrations and holidays. I know oftentimes if you've had your kids in school, you're familiar with various parties throughout the year, whether it be birthday parties or like a back to school, end of the year party, 100th day of school, Valentine's boxes, I don't know, all of these different activities. And sometimes for a child coming out of that, it can be a little disappointing to now be at home and be at the mercy of whatever mom or dad wants to do at home. So what are some ideas maybe to incorporate some of those fun things? Or maybe your child's never gone to school, but you just feel like your days are kind of routine and you want to spice it up a little bit. What are some ideas for that?
Yeah, with us homeschooling from the beginning, the one thing that we kind of did that was traditional school-ish was do a Valentine party. So we did have several friends with younger kiddos, and so we would all get together around Valentine's Day and do the little Valentine trading and things like that. And so that was fun to do. But one thing I always see every year, the first day of school pictures, and that has really, that wasn't a thing, back when I went to school. But now with social media, it's just huge. And homeschoolers can absolutely get on that. And I have seen more and more of my homeschooling friends and on the tagging Sonlight too. Sonlighters posting first day of school pictures, and we just never got into that. Homeschooling from the beginning. My kids are a lot of times like, well, why? Why would we do that? They're just so practical. But do it for mom, right? So that's one thing. The beginning of school. Now, the end of school, we did do kind of unique things at the end of school. These are Sonlight things that we did to celebrate the end of school. We would, when we finished everything, we would stack up all the read aloud, stack up all the readers, stack up all the history books, and stack up all the science books, and then kids would pick their favorites. And I would take a picture of their stack of favorites from each of those subjects. And I actually, for quite a long time, I made Shutterfly albums with just pictures from the year, and I always had their stacks of favorite books. And the science videos, when the kids were in elementary school and they had the science videos. Now, we did Sonlight Science back when it was DVD, and now they're rolling out the new videos that I know are great, but I don't know if they have this. Sunny, you may know. But the old videos had outtakes, the bloopers.
Oh yeah, the
And
bloopers.
so
Yeah.
the last day of school, we'd always watch the science bloopers, maybe multiple times, because the kids got such a kick out of it. And so we did those kinds of things, at the very end of the school year. The 100th day of school, never ever did it, never ever really realized it's just a little number on the top of the IG. Oh, this is the 100th day. Okay. Yeah, never did anything about that, but I have seen, the public schools tend to make a big deal out of that, but we just never did. When it comes to the major holidays like Christmas and Easter, Sonlight does have the newer unit studies, the Lent and the Advent, and those came out after my kiddos were much older, so we never did purchase either of those, but I've just seen great things about them. And you just add it to your school day, and it really brings the meaning that you want to have along with those holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what you said about the pictures, because yeah, I did not start taking Box Day photos until my older child was probably 3rd or 4th grade, and I saw people doing that. I wish I had them when she was little, tiny, like a tiny little thing. I love seeing you all post your preschool, pre-K, kindergarten pictures, because all those moments are so sweet, and I wish I had more pictures. So yeah, I would say take all of the pictures, for back to school or during the year, or when your child learns to read. I do have a little video of my daughter reading one of her kindergarten readers, and she was doing really well, and she asked if we could record a video and send it to Facebook, is what her little self said. And I'm so glad when that comes up every year, because I'm like, oh, she was learning to read. Like, I feel like the time has flown by, and I know we say that a lot. You now have a college student and a high school senior, so I know you're in that same boat, Ian. But yeah, I would say take all the pictures, all the videos while they're little, because it really is, you're going to look back on that and it's going to feel like yesterday, and they're really sweet memories. But that's all we really do for back to school. I know a lot of people do like a big breakfast or something fun. We usually go out for ice cream, but I am just not creative fun mom, and so we don't do a lot of that. We're also night owls. We're not morning people, so especially as my kids get older, they sleep later and later, so it would be an afternoon snack more than breakfast. Probably my oldest generally starts her school close to lunchtime. But we do like to do an end of the school year party. We call it our annual read and feed day. And it is the day that I give my kids the opportunity to just choose whatever favorite snacks they want to buy. I'm not a big snack food person. I don't normally have that stuff in the house. So I'm like, whatever you want. We're going to go crazy, make a list. And then we go to the library and we check out a bunch of books, whatever they want to read. So some of those might be continuations of series that they read in school, or they might just be books they're reading on their own. Sunlighters love to read. So the kids love getting to go and just pick out a whole stack of books to bring home. And then we spend the last day of school doing nothing but eating snacks and reading our fun books. And so that is a day they look forward to. We started that quite a few years ago now, but usually like 3 weeks leading up to it, they're, oh, what snacks should we get? Oh, what books are we going to read? Oh, I need to finish this book so that I can start this book, because I do make them finish their school first. But yeah, my daughter especially, she loves to, she'll kind of double up on things in those weeks leading up to the end, so that she can do nothing but lounge around and read her fun books. And so that's something that we like to do at the end of the year. Yeah, 100th day of school. I never have my kids on the same day in their IG, so so that one would
That's a
not
good
work
point.
work for us. One would be celebrating a week or two before the other one. So
Mm,
that's another thing. If you're stressed and you're like, oh my gosh, I see all these people celebrating the 100th day of school and I'm on day 75. Don't worry about it. You're on your own
mhm.
schedule. It does not matter. And same thing with the holidays. So yeah, I actually, when I see people doing Valentine's boxes and posting them on social media, I always say, oh, thank you, Lord. I don't have my kids in school and I don't have that kind of pressure. I don't have to do science fair backboards. I don't have to do any of these, projects that you have to do when you're in school. But I will say we started doing Sonlight Lent and Advent studies, and that has been something that the kids really enjoy. I do not do the crafts or the baking during the week. We save that for the weekends. And like your daughter and my daughter is the baker, so she does
Mhm.
all the baking. I do not like the mess involved with baking, so she's old enough that I just let the kids do that on their own. But we do the reading together. And last year was actually the first time that we read Dickens' Christmas Carol, because I read Great Expectations in high school and thought I didn't like Dickens and had not read any Dickens since. And it was part of the Advent study that you also got to read A Christmas Carol along with it, and discovered that my perception of Dickens has changed since I was 14 or 15 when I read Great Expectations. And so we enjoyed that too. So I always, if it's like Christmas time or something, I'm like, oh yeah, I can try adding in something new. I know some people do holiday school though. We just add those readings in the evening before bed. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like what is holiday school? Do you have to take off at Thanksgiving and go till New Year's, or what are some ideas maybe that I feel like you said with social media, they've become more popular in recent years maybe than they used to
Right.
be. But if you're new to homeschooling, you might be wondering, when do I take my breaks? What do I do for these
Mhm.
holidays? And as we come into the holiday season, what are some ideas maybe they might want to consider or think about doing this year?
So yeah, so the holidays coming up. I know, and that the beauty of it is you can do whatever works for your family. Some people, when Thanksgiving hits, they just take off school until after Christmas, and they'll do the Advent unit study and do some different things just to do something different and have a different focus. But if you're really needing to finish school, at the end of May, early June, because of what you've got going on in the summer, well, just keep on going. It's completely up to you and what your needs are as a family. So that's the beauty of it. You can see what everybody else is doing and think, oh, that's kind of neat, but no, it's not for me. Or, you might see something that you want to try out the next year. But I think the point is definitely don't let anything stress you out, because you find, what you need to do with your homeschool for your family. And that is exactly what you need to do. So yeah, pretty simple
Yeah.
in my mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. And those of you that are creative and do a lot of fun things, share those photos in the app, because you might
Mhm.
inspire someone else that wants to do that stuff. I know the older my kids get, the less we look for like fun craftsy things because they're older.
Mhm.
But when they were little, they loved anything like that. If they could paint or cut
Mhm.
or whatever it might be. So yeah, if you are super creative, if you're what I call the Pinterest homeschool moms, post those photos because you may inspire someone else. And
Mhm.
again, if you don't want to do any of that, we're going to tell you you don't have to do any of that.
Mhm.
I rarely do. I mean, I usually keep school going right up until the end. I like to get through week 18 by Christmas. Some years that happens, some years it doesn't. Like I mentioned earlier, my daughter would rather be done earlier than later in the school year. So sometimes she'll see if she can get through week 19 or 20 before Christmas,
Mhm.
just to give her a little leeway at the end of the year. And then I know some of you, if you're international, you end school right before the holiday season and don't start till January anyway. So when you're homeschooling, really, you can do what you want. And you mentioned the flexibility to travel
Mhm.
earlier and take vacations in the off season. And so if that's something you like to do, or maybe if the weather is better during the normal school year and you want to go visit a place, think about those things too. So I know for us, sometimes we will homeschool in the summer so that we can travel in September or October or something like that during the weekdays when less people are out and about. So yeah, it's your schedule. You get to be flexible and do what you want, but holidays sometimes just give you an excuse to do some of those fun things. But you definitely don't have to. So let's talk about field trips. I know this is something that when I started homeschooling, I was like, oh my gosh, the kids aren't going to get to go on field trips, or it's, you know, which was always, when I think back to elementary school, I don't remember what I was learning in school necessarily. I remember, like, you know, when we'd do an ice cream party or pizza party in class, or when we would go on a field trip, like those fun activities. So what do you think about field trips when you're homeschooling? What are some maybe ideas or ways to find that? Because if you're homeschooling, you're in charge now. So sometimes that's a little overwhelming for this stuff.
That's right. I think, you know, field trips are a great idea. And it's just limitless, you know, the things you can do. You can look for museums, the zoo, on your family vacations. I mean, a family vacation is really just a big giant field trip if you want to think about it that way. And so you can seek out things to do. Oh, I will say the best start of a homeschool year ever was 2018 for us, where we began our homeschool year by going to Hawaii. And so we did, my son ended up earning a credit for World War II studies because he had watched all these documentaries and read all these books. And so he got to take a field trip to Pearl Harbor. And anyway, amazing. So that was a pretty cool field trip to start off our school year. But it does not have to be anything elaborate like that. That was something that we were very fortunate to have saved up our points, and and we're able to do that to celebrate our 20th anniversary and bring the kiddos, and it was just a great time. But that is not the norm. That is not our normal field trip. So anything local, look for local museums, look at the zoo. And there are unique things that you might not even think about. There is a dairy place just about 45 minutes from us, and they have a little dairy museum, and they give tours and things like that. And there are just so many things out there. And so many places now do homeschool days in particular. So if you look at any museum's website or any zoo's website, they are pretty likely to have an actual dedicated homeschool day with maybe special rates or things like that. So you can definitely look for that. Even theme parks have homeschool days now too. If you can go ride some roller coasters and talk about physics if you want to as a field trip. Let me think. It was other things we've done. Pretty much museums, symphonies, just anything that you would want to do as a family. You can, consider your whole life is part of school. It's kind of hard to categorize these things when you're a homeschooler. And so, even, going to the grocery store is kind of a learning field trip, honestly. But I will say, I think that trips to the museum and trips to the zoo can really be more meaningful when you go as a family or as maybe a small group of homeschoolers. And because we've been at different museums when these giant groups, busloads of people come in, and I'm very glad that they have the opportunity to do that. But my kids, their eyes get really, really big, and they're like, "Can we just wait for that group to pass through?" And so we do, we let them pass through, and then we take our time. But I just really feel that you can get so much more out of it with a smaller group going through a museum. You can really take the time to read all the things and experience, whatever activities, especially in those little, science museums with lots of hands-on things for the kids to do. So yeah, I love going as a family or as a group of small group of homeschoolers. You can really make the most out of those times.
Yeah, so a lot of times a co-op will give you the opportunity, to go as a group if that's something you're looking for. A lot of times you can get like the group rate if it's an expensive activity. But I agree with you that doing it as a family has so much more meaning. I know we started doing that. My husband was actually on a business trip in Washington, D.C. by himself, and he had never been there. And I had been there on a trip with my dad and my sister. And he's like, "Oh, what were your favorite things?" And I said, "Go to the National Archives, see the
Mhm.
Constitution, see the Declaration of Independence, like look at those documents.
Mhm.
I found that to be an incredibly moving experience. And when
Mhm.
he was in there, he observed a group of probably fourth graders that were on a field trip, just kind of running around and not understanding the magnitude, I guess, of where they
Yeah.
were, what they were looking at. And he came home. I mean, he still talks about it to this day, but he came home and he was like, I don't want that for our kids. I want them to understand when we go to a place, like what
Right.
it means, why it's important, all of these different things. And so he kind of took the lead on that. But it's true, when we travel as a family and we go places, Sonlight kids, they will read all the things, they will
Mhm.
listen to the volunteer that's giving the tour.
Mhm.
And when you're in a small group, you don't have that distraction of 20 classmates. And we were in a national park one time, and there was a field trip coming through, and the poor chaperone was, it was like he was herding a group of cats together, trying to get them all in one place. And he was trying to explain, oh, this represents blah, blah, blah. And these kids were
Mhm.
not listening to him at all.
Mhm.
And even my daughter was like, oh, yeah, I'm having way more fun just as a family learning these things. I'm going to give another plug for Pearl Harbor. We did that on a vacation too. Spent 10 hours there. It was
Mhm.
the coolest. Now, I
Mhm.
love history, I will say, but to
Mhm.
actually stand in those places and visualize everything, it's a very well done museum area, and it's also very emotional, impactful. So
Yes.
if you've ever had one of those places where you've gone that's a memorial, and you have the emotional side of that. But my kids
Mhm.
were fourth and eighth grade, fourth and something like that. I don't know. No, he's in fourth grade now. Never mind. So like second, and I'm trying to figure out how old my kids were, but it's still done in a way that my son, who was young, had not learned about World War II yet, still got a lot out of it. But then my daughter, who had done E and F in Sonlight, I mean,
Mhm.
she was just blown away by it. So yeah, I would say anything like that. If you're in an area where there's some really unique or different history, check it out. But you mentioned local dairy farms,
Mhm.
local, I think Lisa, one of the other Sonlight mentors, mentions the signs on the side of the highway that
Mhm.
are significant historical
Mhm.
places. I grew up in the Kansas City metro area, which is where of the different trails, like the Oregon Trail and Santa Fe, California Trail, where they all started. And so there's a ton of those little markers all over the place, just like, oh, the Oregon Trail crossed through here. And so whether it's finding those places in your town, almost every area that we've been in, there's at least like a small historical society or a
Mhm.
museum or something like that where you can learn about the history of the area. I mean, even looking at photos from 200 years ago of
Mhm.
now what's the center of your town and there's nothing there, or it has kind of that Wild West look to it, I think is really interesting for kids. But then also businesses. You mentioned the grocery store.
Mhm.
I've heard of people going to visit donut shops or,
Mhm.
whatever, flower shops, whatever the business is. Oftentimes, if you tell them, hey, I would like to come learn about it, I have kids this age, we homeschool, is there a good time for
Mhm.
us to come and learn? You will find that a lot of places are very open to teaching your kids things. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes it takes a little more effort to plan those activities, but anywhere that the kids want to learn about, or anytime there's an activity, I know like our local community, the firefighters always bring out like a fire truck to big
Mhm.
community events, or the police will bring out a police car. They let the kids, climb around and learn that way. So even for very littles, there's just so many fun ideas like that. And I love what you said, Ian, about learning becomes a family activity when you homeschool. I mean, everything is a chance to learn. And I know now, no matter where we go or what we do, I'm like, oh, well, you remember in this book when we talked about
Mhm.
this is where it happened, or whatever the situation may be. I'm a total history nerd, so I love all the all the historical sites. But yeah, if your kids or you are into other educational things, like you said, go ride roller coasters. It's physics, it's math.
Mhm.
You can turn anything into a learning opportunity. Should you make it like a big formal thing? Like, should you have your child write a paper about it or tell you what they
Mhm.
learned afterwards? Or do you just go for fun and hope they caught some of it?
Oh yeah. I'm of the philosophy. Yeah, you go for fun. And I mean, and the discussions are going to happen. You're going to talk about, oh wow, that was the coolest, fish or whatever you saw in the aquarium. I mean, it's just talking about it is going to happen. So there doesn't definitely doesn't have to be anything formal done at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, and can you count that as school? I've seen that sometimes, like if you're in a state where you have to report activity, like your academic time, can you count field trips as school?
Oh yes, absolutely. And these time requirements just get me, because it seems like sometimes they're thinking, well, you've got to take, traditional school and do that at home. It's going to take X number of hours. Whereas it may not take that, as much time at all, but you're still getting the education. So absolutely, you can count any of those things. I mean, you count the kids going with you to the grocery store. That counts as school too. I mean, they can help you make the list. They can help you find the things. You can talk about, I'm going to pick this one over this one because it costs less per ounce. I mean, goodness, yeah. So many things that you can count as school, because they really are learning opportunities for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, yeah, we live in Colorado where you have to report a number of days and they tell you approximately this many hours per day on
Mm,
these things. And yeah, like Ian said, if you think about going to the grocery store, you're using math skills there, reasoning,
mhm,
good customer service. If you have the child, practicing manners, something that I've always done when we go to a restaurant is as I figure out the tip, I hand it to my kids and I'll say, okay, what percentage did I tip? Okay, now what should my total be? And I let them do the math there. So even little things like that, like they're using those skills. And so remember, it doesn't have to be 5 hours with my math book sitting
mhm,
here learning this, right? It's 5 hours of math activities. So are you baking together? Are you, they're figuring out a tip? Are you grocery shopping? Are they trying to figure out, okay, I got this amount of money for my birthday, what can I buy with it, how does tax work, all of those different things.
mhm,
So yeah, and like we said, you can incorporate education into almost anything, whether that's, oh look, I'm changing the oil in the car, why don't you come help me,
mhm.
help me, and you will learn how to don't know how much help the kids are, but that's something that or if we've had a flat tire, the kids get out and watch and they get to help and do different things because that's a learning opportunity as well. So let's talk about though prioritizing the academics, because I know somebody's watching getting all of these amazing ideas to do fun things, but they're going to let the schoolwork slip, or they're trying to figure out, oh, I want to add in more fun things, but I feel like my time is already fully spent trying
Mm.
to get through the school day. So what are some ways people can maybe prioritize those fun things but still make sure they're getting all the schoolwork done that they want to, and maybe how do they determine what that standard is? This is something we haven't talked about. You have to complete your entire
Mm.
Sonlight program for your school year to count. How do you figure out what the standard is and then make sure you're meeting it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many things to think about, because Sunlight makes it so easy. It's all planned out for 36 weeks of school. I do personally highly recommend the 4-day per week schedules, especially if you are involved in a co-op or want to become involved in some of these different things, because it definitely makes it more manageable to have the history, Bible, literature 4 days a week. I science teacher by nature. I always did the 5-day science anyway, because it's only a couple extra books. Like, I gotta have all the science books. But with everything scheduled out, it really makes it easy for you to see how much time you have. And theoretically, you determine when your school year ends. If you don't get all the way through a history, Bible, literature level, you can pick it up again in the fall. There's no right or wrong with it at all. And same thing with really with anything. So just on my personal experience, there is definitely time to do some of these activities. School is not going to take so much time that you can't do anything extra. And if it is, then, talk to us. We'll help you figure it out, because it really should not be taking all of your time. And so the key is to just to prioritize and to think about what kinds of things you want to be doing. If you want them to experience sports or music, like we said, there's so many things to pick and choose from. But you definitely can, fit it into your day. The 4-day schedule is great to make things more manageable. And then the flexibility, we've already talked about that. And of course, if you're working part-time or full-time while homeschooling, you do have a certain schedule you can keep, you have to keep, and that can limit what you want to do. But for us, when we did sports and they got home at 9 o'clock after the T-ball game, T-ball, we don't know 9 o'clock. What is that? But we could sleep in, the kids can sleep in. So definitely, and it is only for a season, the T-ball season is not all year round. And so also keep that in mind as you're scheduling everything out. And I almost forgot to mention, I'm wearing my volleyball shirt, because that's another perk of doing these extracurricular activities, is because it makes your wardrobe for you. What do you have to wear? Oh, I need to wear a volleyball shirt today. I've got a volleyball game. And it can actually it takes all the guesswork out of dressing yourself every day. So that's another thing that I've loved over the years.
I love that. That's such a fun, I didn't even think about that. Something that I do, I'm always, unless I have to be on camera or I'm going somewhere, I'm always dressed in some level of athleisure workout gear, so that I can walk away from my desk and go work out. That was something that I started doing to make that a priority. I realized that I needed a separation between my work day and homeschooling. And so at the end of my day, I walk away from the desk, I go fit in a workout, or I go run with the dog or something. And then I come back, and that tells my brain, okay, you've worked out now it's time to do school. And it makes it easier to shift those gears. So make sure you're wearing whatever you're comfortable in. I've seen some people say, oh, get dressed, you're going to be more productive. Maybe, if that works for you. If it doesn't, wear the volleyball t-shirt because you've got a game later, or wear the clothes you can work out in easily. And we'll tell you, when I'm not on camera, I'm messy bun all the time. That's why I keep my hair long, because it's just easy and low maintenance. But another thing too that we talked kind of lightly about is, remember, you've got time that is not just a normal school day. So if you feel like, oh, I cannot, maybe Friday's your co-op day and you're like, I don't get any school done on Friday. Well, then plan around that, knowing I'm not going to do any of my Sonlight on Friday, by doing a 4-day schedule, and or maybe reading some books in the evening before bed or on the weekend. To us, read alouds don't feel like school. We can do them any day, anytime. We're just reading a book together as a family. So if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm running out of time today, okay, we're going to prioritize math. We're going to prioritize reading for a child that's learning to read. Now that my kids know how to read, they're not going to regress if they go a day without reading. However, they do like to read on their own books more than what they're reading for school anyway, so they will naturally kind of do that. But choosing what you're going to focus on, and then the extras either get done in the evening or the weekend, or read alouds. We usually save a few to carry into the summer, because I discovered we would do all this awesome reading during the year, and then summer would hit, and it was like, oh, what are we going to read now? Now I've got to go find my own books. Like, what am I going to do? And so we started intentionally saving them. But Anne, I love what you said. If you don't finish your 36 weeks of your instructor's guide, just pick it back up again. That is something that I intentionally slowed down a level with my son when his reading level wasn't quite there yet. And so he did the math book in a year. We moved to the next level in math, but his Sonlight HBL level got stretched. His science level got stretched. And so he was doing that level, but further along. So we started our school year at like week 24 or 25, with plans to finish that and then go right into the next one if we were still in the middle of the school year. So don't feel like you have to do 36 weeks in one school year. That isn't feasible for lots of people for lots of reasons. If you have a new baby or a health crisis, or somebody passes away, or you've got a child maybe that's done in our case, he had done all the preceding levels like before that, but just was not a strong enough reader to take on that added load of a harder level. And so I said, well, let's slow it down. We're still going to read all the books. We're going to do all the things, but we're going to stretch it out. And that makes it much more manageable for a child in that situation. And then to remembering you don't have to do big formal things. Like I don't sit down and say, what field trip can I plan? I'm, looking online and I'm like, oh, this cool community event is happening on this day. We need to make sure we go check it out, and ends up becoming a field trip accidentally, or, a class at the library that, oh, look, this can become an enrichment activity, for this little period that it's happening. And so I very much am like, okay, I don't know what fun things we're doing this year. We'll figure it out a few weeks before, and then we do some of them. But then the schoolwork, I know kind of, okay, these days and times, this is when we're doing school. But it is incredibly flexible when you're homeschooling. You get to set the standards. So don't let anyone tell you that, oh, in order to pass first grade, this child needs to do all these things, because it really, I don't think I was comfortable with that until I had homeschooled a while. But you really, now that I have a high schooler, like I'm setting the standard for her to graduate high school, and I see like, okay, it's not nearly as hard or involved as I thought early on. But Anne, you gave a great suggestion. If somebody's stuck or struggling or stressed, get into the app, post that, reach out to all of us. We will reassure you, encourage you, pray for you, and provide examples of options you could do. And then at that point, you're still in control of your homeschool. You get to decide, am I going to take their suggestion? Am I going to modify it a little bit to go along with what's going to work best for my family, my kids? We want to help you out. We would love to help you out. And we've all been there, done that. So, it took me many years of trying things before I felt comfortable saying, yep, this was the right solution for that problem. But yeah, we would definitely love to help you out with those things. Before we wrap up, Anne, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I would just want to add that I'm excited for any of you that are watching this, because you have started an amazing journey with homeschooling, and just the opportunities are so amazing. You'll get to be able to watch your kids do things that you never did before. Share with things, just share with them. You're living life together, and it just doesn't get any better than that. So I just want to encourage you all that we're here for you, and it is an amazing journey. And I just get all weepy talking about that. I have a senior in high school, my son's in college. I mean, it's all good, it's all exciting about where they're going, and it's great. But I do just especially love talking with people that are new to homeschool, new to Sonlight. And I just get so excited for you, because I know about this journey you're going to be on, and it is so exciting. And so that's really all I've got.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And enjoy the moment. Like I said, take all the pictures, because you'll look back and say, oh, I forgot, or it feels like yesterday, and it's now been 10 years or whatever. You will look back at even the craziest homeschool seasons fondly once you're past them. So if you need encouragement in the moment, if you're struggling, let us know. We would love to encourage you. But yes, I absolutely would echo what Anne is saying. You're not going to regret the time you've spent with them. You're not going to regret learning together as a family and making those memories. So try to enjoy it as much as you can, even when it feels hard. And again, if you need prayer or anything at all, reach out to us in the Sonlight Connections app, and we will definitely pray for you and encourage you. And thank you so much for joining us today.